Hi, everybody. Welcome to the first edition of Cowboy Chat here on Poke Vision. Very happy to be here hosting. I'm Tom Hafer, and our first guest on Cowboy Chat is a great name in McNeese Cowboy history, one of the best wide receivers in Cowboy history, one of the best wide receiver and offensive coaches in Cowboy history, the current wide receiver coach of the Buffalo Bills, and a 2017 honoree of the McNeese Hall of Fame, Adam Henry. Adam, welcome, and very good to see you here.
Thank you. Glad to be here. Yeah, homecoming, able to see a bunch of friends and see Coach Viator. So it's a wonderful time right now.
It is. And speaking of wonderful times, 1990 to 1993, that's when you were here with the Cowboys. Talk about that time frame, how you got here to McNeese, who recruited you, and what your expectations were, and then the fact that the Cowboys became a powerhouse in the time that you were here.
Well, it was an odd story because my brother Patrick had went to Lamar in '89. He was a year older than me, so I'm the youngest of 8 siblings. And so they closed their program. And so being from Beaumont, Texas, playing at Monsignor Kelly High School, McNeese was recruiting my brother, and so Hubert Bowles was the recruiter. Yeah. So my brother was a linebacker at the time, so he ended up going to another school. But Hubert Bowles seen my film, and he started recruiting me. And so he and my father formed a great relationship. And so for me, it was one of those things that just kind of happened. It was probably one of the best things that ever happened to me. Mm-hmm. And so when I get here, Coach Keezer, Bobby Keezer is the head coach. So they're in their first year, and so we're doing a major overhaul. And so as a freshman, I come in and I don't play the first game much, but then one of the receivers, Eastland, gets hurt, tears his ACL, and then DeLone. And then I end up playing, and then it's just kind of one of those things that just took off from there. Didn't know what to expect coming from a small school in Beaumont, and then got here and really enjoyed it. I have lifelong friends, and so it has helped me tremendously, even from the coaching point of where I'm at today.
You played with some terrific teammates. Kerry Joseph and you were one of the best quarterback wide receiver combinations in Cowboy history. Terry Irving was here. Lance Guidry was here. The late Henry Fields. All of these. Talk about some of the guys that you played with in that 90 to 93 time frame.
It was very, very, we had some good talent. I still keep in contact with Lance Guidry, Terry Irving, Kerry Joseph. I talked to him 2 days ago. And so all my teammates are pretty much lifelong friends, but great athletes. Even Eric Atchison, who was the first quarterback when I first got here, and now he's a surgeon. So it's just a doctor, so a physician. So it's just, I met Lance probably the first day I got here. He was outside the King Dormitory and became friends, instantly, he and Reggie Collins. Yeah. And so it was one of those things where Terry Irvin would go to his room. They would play, Nintendo back in the day, and he would even dissect the Nintendo games and being a good defensive player, so it was some great talent. You didn't really know how good we were until we played other teams, and then to see them do what they did. And so like Henry Fields being big, fast, and strong, being able to run the ball like that, and Eric Foster. So we had the 3 Fs and, Fontenette, and it was a great backfield. And then also we had tremendous, like Kavika Pittman, he was a long rangy guy who came in and you knew that he was destined for greatness. Zach Bronson as a freshman, to pick off Kurt Warner 3 times in that game against Northern Iowa. And it was just, you go back to all the lifelong memories of the guys who could play, and Lance being tough. So playing in the slot, I went against Lance Guidry all the time. And then we end up coaching together and coaching against each other the whole time. And so that was the great special, bond that we still hold today. Kevin Smith played corner. I talk to him all the time. Damian Joseph, I go stay at his house. He was a receiver. Terrence Davis, actually his daughter plays up in Buffalo. And so he came to our last home game 2 games ago, and so his daughter plays up there in Buffalo. So I still stay in contact with a lot of those guys.
1992 was the first playoff win in McNeese's FCS 1AA history at Idaho against the Vandals. Do you have any recollections of that ball game?
I do. It was one of those games that it was, we were the 16th seed. They were the number 1 seed, and we went up there and then just kind of shocked the whole FCS. It was one of those things where people didn't think that we were good enough. They had the Walter Payton Award winner, at quarterback, Nussmeier.
Yeah.
So, and then what's oddly enough, he gets drafted at the Saints in the 4th round, and I signed as a free agent.
Right.
And so he marries Christy, who went to school
Yeah.
here also. And we also coached at the Dallas Cowboys together. So we were vice. So
yeah.
I still stay in contact when
Very
we
cool.
played, New Orleans Saints a couple, games ago. But having that going up there to Idaho and seeing the snow and, just the experience for the guys to go up there and into the dome and then go into a hostile environment and for us to come out with the win was tremendous. That was huge.
Yeah. Bobby Kiesler, head coach, and a great staff that he had with us. What are your remembrances of that bunch of coaches, and how did they influence you in becoming a coach?
Well, it very, very instrumental in my life. Bobby, as far as Kiesler, Coach Kiesler, just giving me an opportunity to coach. Didn't know that I really wanted to coach, and the integral part was Mike Santiago.
Yeah.
And so Mike, rest in peace, but he was the one that called me and asked me 3 times, "Do you want to coach?" And I was like, I don't know if that's something I wanted to do. So initially I wanted to be a dentist and I was like, maybe a lawyer. And then he was like, have you ever thought about coaching? I was like, I just don't know. And because he found out I was coming back to finish school. And so I ended up coming back in 97.
Yeah.
And then we went to the playoffs, went to the national championship. And I was like, wow, I like this.
Yeah.
And so kind of got the bug and it all happened, just organically. But the whole staff, like Coach Kiesler being instrumental in telling the stories about life, and Coach Santiago and, Scott Stoker, when I first started coaching, he helping me out coaching receivers, and, Coach Viator. So it was just, Johnny Nagel. So it was a bunch of, it was so many good coaches here. And so even, the strict coach, and it was just one of those things where I just enjoyed all the coaches and they taught me a whole lot.
After McNeese, you were able to sign with the New Orleans Saints. Tell us your experiences in the NFL and in that NFL locker room.
It was definitely different, going into a locker room with grown men and just football all day, and it was a great experience for me. Of course, Keith Ortego had coached me. He had played at the Chicago Bears, and it was one of those things. And talking to him, it still didn't put into words like being in the locker room and being able to get on the field and in the preseason to score a touchdown, and actually Nussmeier threw the touchdown. And so, we joke about that all the time, being the 4th quarter buddies. So, but it was a great experience for me, and I learned so much. And most people don't realize that what you do is important, because in that locker room was Carl Smith. He was the offense coordinator, and then Bruce Arians was the tight ends coach. And so when I made the transition into the NFL, those were the 2 that played an integral part of that, because in 2003, I did a minority internship with the Cleveland Browns. And so Bruce Arians was the OC and Carl Smith was quarterback coach. And so back then, most people don't even know this story. I told this to my wife, is that, they asked me after I did the internship, is something you want to do? I was like, no, I'm happy at McNeese. I'm going to go back. And I went back. So they actually tried to get me to go in 2003. And then 2007, when Lane Kiffin gets the job at the Oakland Raiders, Carl Smith said, are you ready? I said, yeah. So he and Bruce Arians actually were the same ones who actually helped me in my career. There's this whole story behind that, but because of me taking care of my business and doing what I was supposed to, they were, they really loved me just as a player and as a person. And so they were instrumental for me getting from McNeese to the Oakland Raiders.
This is Cowboy Chat. Our guest is Adam Henry, the Cowboys, one of the greatest receivers in Cowboy history, and now currently the Buffalo Bills wide receivers coach. Let's talk about the NFL coaching experience that you've had. You've been to several different places, and you have coached some really, really remarkable wide receivers, haven't you?
Yes, it's been very interesting. 15 years. This is my 15th year in the NFL. Now 14 in college. So of course 10 at McNeese. I did 3 at LSU and then 1 at Indiana. So, just going to the Oakland Raiders and coaching there and not knowing exactly how much do I know or don't know. But once I got there, I ended up coaching tight ends, initially, because Greg Knapp was like, you're smart, you're sharp, you need to coach tight ends. That way you get to know the whole offense, the pass protection, things of those nature. And so for me, that was a great learning curve for me, because now I can teach and coach wideouts from a position of protection and being part of the protection and being where you're supposed to be, how you're supposed to be, when you're supposed to be. And so for that, when going and transitioning to LSU, and that's where I got to coach, Odell Beckham Jr. and Jarvis Landry. And so those guys really took heed to what I was coaching and doing. And so it's pretty much the same things I was doing in McNeese, but just on a bigger level. And so it took notice. And so it's one of the biggest blessings in my life. And then going back and going to San Francisco 49ers, coaching Anquan Bolden and Torrey Smith for a year, and then going back to the Giants and coaching Odell with Victor Cruz and then Brandon Marshall in that group. And then from there, going to Cleveland, and most people don't know, but I was there and had a really good relationship with the GM, Alonzo Highsmith, the assistant, all those guys. And then, Dorsey was the GM. And so was able to get Jarvis the first year, and then able to get, Odell there in Cleveland. So being integral in that. And the most important thing was for me is those guys signed really big contracts, but to see their lives change, for their family. So that was really a blessing. And then from there, going to Dallas, coaching CeeDee Lamb and getting drafted Amari Cooper and Michael Gallup. So, and then from there, and then taking some time off. Both my parents had passed in 21, so I was going to take a year off. And then Indiana called. And so one of my mentors that I coached with at the Giants, and he was like, think you need to coach. So I ended up going there. It's Craig Johnson. He had coached quarterbacks, at Tennessee Titans for about 10 to 12 years. And so I really listened to Craig, and I was like, okay, this is something I want to do. So it was a great experience. Tom Allen was great for me doing that transition. And then now being in Buffalo and coaching Stephon Diggs and now Keon Coleman. So I have a large list and the resume of great guys, but, connection with those guys and being able to see a bigger purpose and understand it's more than just football. Football is a great avenue for you to get to where you need to be, but it changes lives. And so for me, it's about developing the whole person, the whole, man. And so that's what really, sticks out to me with the relationships I've bonded with the guys.
One of your NFL experiences, Coach Henry, is 3 times you have been the team selected for HBO's Hard Knocks. That must have been quite an experience, very interesting to be a part of.
Yes, it has been. Starting off in 18 in Cleveland, that's when Jarvis Landry went off in the receiver room about being injured, and you got to practice, and so it was pretty much cameras all around continuously. So everything was pretty much live. And then, but it was a different process. You may be talking to a young man and trying to get him going or saying things, and then there's a boom mic stop or something. So you got to watch what you're saying, how you're saying it. And at the time, I didn't want to say certain things because my mom would maybe listen to it, and so you have to bleep it out. And so it was kind of uncensored. But no, that was very interesting. And doing it with the Cowboys, and it was different in 21, and so they kind of filter it more. They would kind of tell you when things were happening or today you're alive. And so it kind of calmed it down to kind of navigate that process. But it is different because cameras are all around you at all the times. And so it's not normal, but you try to act normal. And so they do a good job of protecting coaches and painting the story and making that story come to life. And so it's very interesting. So doing it this past year in Buffalo was actually very good because it was like, okay, today we're doing this is what's going on. So they put out a schedule, even a schedule in the dorms, because we go to a college, St. John's, and so we go there for training camp. And so they would have a schedule and things of that nature. And so it is different, because in team rooms and meeting rooms, they're always around. And so, but it's a great process, is a great thing for the players to pretty much get their image and likeness out. And so pretty much coaches don't like it because, we just want to coach football. But now more and more, it's more acceptable. But it's been a great experience. So 3 times in, so most of the time people say, well, I seen you at, that's how people recognize me. is through Hard Knocks. You know, even my neighbors are like, I seen you on Hard Knocks. They don't know who I am because I don't say much, but they recognize me more from Hard Knocks than they do as me a coach for the Buffalo Bills.
You're here in town in part to visit your daughter, who is a cowgirl.
Yes.
Tell us about your daughter, Ava.
Yes, 35 years later. I have a daughter that is playing volleyball at McNeese, and I'm so happy. So Ava Cecilia is in her first year, and I'm so excited. She is so happy. She loves her teammates. She loves, you know, her decision. It was her decision on her own to be a legacy child, and so for her, she could see herself in it. And so for me to be able just to sit back as a father and just to see her be happy and to play a sport that she loved. And she worked extremely hard to get to where she was because she was a COVID baby during the junior high time where she didn't play a whole lot.
Yeah.
And so for her, as a freshman, she played on, you know, the freshman team and JV team just to get reps in to get to where she was. It just need to be. So for her to work so hard, a freshman, sophomore year to develop into the player that she became, I'm extremely happy. And she had a big injury her junior year. She fought through it. She's strong. She's tough. So I'm just happy to be a father and just to watch her and to witness her and see her happy.
Any great stories of your teammates that you'd like to pass along to us? Anything that sticks out in your mind from back in the days or even while you were coaching?
Well, one of the big things for us is that we would always hang out together. And so for us after games or we had an evening in the off season, you know, we were always together. And so we formed like Erwin Brown and Jason Kidd, Eric Kidd and Eric was, you know, they were freshmen. We were the three freshmen that played as freshmen, true freshmen. And so just having that bond with those guys and then just hanging out. I remember the memories of us just being together. We always went to parties together and we went to outings together. And so we were always together, and that made us so close to where it sped up the process for us to have success and to turn over the program in a short time. And as a coach, it's just, you know, Jermaine Martin and speaking to his family and, you know, where he's come from and where he's at today, or even the BJ Sams. You know, I still remember when he was coming out and I told the scout that he can play on the next level and he will play. And the scout was like, well, I don't know. And then from then on, that scout listened to everybody. I told him, because he was, you know, I'm not saying, but, you know, so to see those guys' lives change and the type of players we had to, you know, the Rod Roll who played linebacker for us, you know, but we had Quentin Lawrence, who I still speak to. Like, we had a really strong Stephen Whitehead. It was just, you know, he always talking in meetings. Like the meeting rooms were so impactful, so fun to be in. Ramon Smothers. I mean, it was so many guys, you know, that Hammond Thomas. It was, and I forget what years they played at McNeese because I still keep in contact with them. So I still have to say now, what year did you play in? I'm 53, so I don't really understand. And so my wife was like, did he play for you in NFL? I was like, no, these are McNeese guys. She was like, you stay in contact with the McNeese guys? So Hammond Thomas came to a game for us and a Miami game. And so, and his mother was really appreciative. You know, she got to go to the game and just so happy that a coach still stays in contact, you know, with this player. So that's what I take pride in. I may not be there all the time, you know, but when guys text, I always try to reply and be there. You know, LaMarcus Turner, he was my first recruit when they put me on the road and stuck me in northern Louisiana. And Brady James is this big linebacker playing at West Monroe. And all these recruits, all these scouts are coming in and he's just sitting there and they just one after one. I've come there for Marcus Turner and the game was 0-0. I forgot what it was. He caught a punt return, scored. They stopped him. Got the ball, he scored another touchdown, and then something happened. They kicked the field goal, they kicked it off, he scored a touchdown. I left the game. I said, I won it. Like, it was just like one of that. So I still remember that game, you know, of just him playing and being impactful and to be able to bring him here, you know, and that was my first recruit. But then also the Quentin Lawrence and seeing him at Cancro and developing and being the person that he is and how he is, he's doing really well for himself in Houston.
just about finished. Thank you so much for being with us, Coach Adam Henry. One last thing I wanted to ask you here on Cowboy Chat. What does McNeese State University mean to you?
It means a lot to me. I'm a two-time alumni, undergrad and graduate school. I also got my doctorate May 9th in education leadership with concentration in higher education. So for me, it's about the education and what it's done for me. The people that I've met, the lives that I've, changed, it changed my life and made me a man. And so for me, it was one of the best decisions that I ever made. And so for me, I didn't know at the time, but as I left McNeese, I didn't know how much I knew until I got in other surroundings. And so even from a football standpoint, I was way ahead of the curve in knowing football because of the brand of football that was played in the Southland Conference. So for me, I owe everything in that I had pretty much in my life for McNeese because it's taught me a lot. So I have endowment scholarship, football scholarship here, and just being able to give back. And I encourage others to do the same because it's a great institution. And so for us to rally back, Coach Viatar is in place, and for us just to rally around him and to help and support.
Thank you, Coach Henry. We appreciate it. This has been our first episode of Cowboy Chat here on Poke Nation. For Coach Adam Henry, I'm Tom Hafer. Thanks for being with us.